the timeless past.
Dark Secrets of North Sentinel Island's Stone Age tribe, revealed in November 2018, a 26-year-old American missionary, John Allen Chow, was killed in a hail of arrows just moments after stepping onto a remote beach in the Bay of Bengal. The media went into a frenzy. Headlines around the world painted the tribe that killed him as merciless savages, a hostile relic from a lost world. But what if that story, the one we all heard, got it wrong? What if the real savages in this long, bloody history were us? This is the story of North Sentinel Island that you were never told. It's a story that doesn't start with John Chow, but more than a century before him. It's a story of shocking colonial cruelty, kidnappings, and betrayals that forged a deep and honestly, a justified hostility toward the outside world. This is the truth about why the Sentinelese meet outsiders with violence, and why their fierce isolation is the only thing that's kept them alive. The Island of Mystery. Deep in the Bay of Bengal, part of India's Andaman Islands, sits a small, densely forested landmass called North Sentinel Island. At roughly 23 square miles, it's about the size of Manhattan. But that's where the comparison ends. This is one of the last truly isolated places on Earth, home to the Sentinelese people. While humans have been in the Andaman region for tens of thousands of years, the Sentinelese have lived in extraordinary isolation, developing a unique culture completely separate from our own. They're a ghost in the machine of the 21st century. We know so little that we don't even know what they call themselves. We don't understand their language, and we can only guess at their population, which experts estimate is somewhere between 50 and 200 people. Their home is a natural fortress, surrounded by treacherous coral reefs that have wrecked ships for centuries, and hidden by a jungle so dense it's almost impenetrable. For the tribe's own protection, the Indian government enforces a strict exclusion zone, making it illegal to go within 5 nautical miles of the shore. This law isn't just to protect outsiders, it's mainly to protect the Sentinelese. Because they've lived in total isolation, their immune systems have no defense against diseases we consider common. For the Sentinelese, the flu, measles, or even a simple cold could be as deadly as a bullet. An infection could tear through their community and wipe them out, a tragic fate that has befallen countless other indigenous peoples. But this hands-off policy didn't just appear overnight. It was born from a dark history, a history that starts in the Age of Empires with a man whose name is tied to the original sin committed against this tribe. The original sin, the abuses of Maurice Vidal Portman. The year is 1880. The British Empire controls India, including the remote Andaman Islands. A British naval officer named Maurice Vidal Portman is the officer in charge of the Andamanese, a colonial administrator with a strange and obsessive interest in the local tribes. He thought of himself as an anthropologist, a man of science hoping to study what he called primitive peoples. That January, Portman led an armed party to the shores of North Sentinel. As they landed, the island went eerily silent. The Sentinelese, watching from the shadows, had vanished. Portman's men found small villages, the embers of their fires still warm, a sign of how quickly the tribe had fled. After days of searching, Portman's party finally cornered and captured 6 people, an elderly couple and 4 young children. This wasn't diplomacy. It was a kidnapping. These 6 Sentinelese were torn from their world and taken to the colonial capital, Port Blair. The shock must have been immense, but a far more invisible threat was already at work. Without the protection of their isolated home, their immune systems were defenseless. In Portman's own records, he wrote that the group sickened rapidly. The elderly man and his wife soon died. Realizing his catastrophic error, Portman decided to return the 4 orphaned children to the island. He sent them back with gifts, a pathetic and meaningless gesture for the trauma he'd caused. One can only imagine the scene. 4 terrified children, possibly already carrying new diseases, trying to explain to their tribe what had happened. This single horrific event is believed to have become the foundational trauma for the Sentinelese. It was their first real introduction to the outside world, and it brought abduction, sickness, and death. It was a lesson they would almost certainly pass down through generations, a warning whispered around their fires: outsiders are death. This was the dark secret at the heart of their hostility, poisoning the well of contact forever. A pattern of violence, shipwrecks, and conflict. The horror of Portman's abduction wasn't a one-off event. Over the next century, a series of violent encounters only strengthened the Sentinelese belief that the outside world meant danger. The same coral reefs that protected their island became a stage for conflict. In 1867, an Indian merchant ship, the Nineveh, was wrecked on the reef. The 106 survivors made it to the beach, but after 3 days, the Sentinelese warriors emerged from the forest. They attacked the shipwrecked crew, who had to fend off assaults until a Royal Navy ship came to their rescue. To the Sentinelese, it was another invasion. Decades later, in 1896, an escaped convict from the British penal colony on another island drifted to North Sentinel on a raft. His bid for freedom was short-lived. A search party later found his body on the beach, riddled with arrows. He had trespassed, and the Sentinelese had delivered their verdict. The 20th century brought bigger intrusions. In 1981, a cargo ship, the Primrose, got stuck on the reef in a storm. After a few days, a crewman on watch spotted figures on the beach, small, dark-skinned men carrying spears and bows. Panic erupted on the Primrose. The captain sent a frantic radio message asking for an airdrop of firearms to defend against what he called wild island people, who he claimed were building boats to attack them. The crew armed themselves with whatever they could find: flare guns, axes, and metal pipes. Ironically, the storm that shipwrecked them also saved them. The rough seas kept the Sentinelese canoes from reaching the ship. A few days later, a helicopter winched the crew to safety one by one. The rusting wrecks of the Primrose and another ship, the Rusley, became permanent fixtures on the reef. The resourceful Sentinelese scavenged iron from the hulls, hammering the metal into stronger arrowheads and tools. In a strange twist, these intrusions had provided them with a new technology, not through peaceful trade, but from the wreckage of a world they wanted nothing to do with. A glimmer of hope. The peaceful contacts of T.N. Pandit. For more than a century, the story of North Sentinel Island was written in violence. The narrative seemed set. Outsiders bring death, so they must be met with death. But then a new chapter began, one that offered a brief, tantalizing glimpse of another way. This chapter was written by an Indian anthropologist named T.N. Pandit. Starting in the late 1960s, Pandit was part of government-sponsored expeditions to establish friendly contact. For years, the process was the same. Their boats would approach the island, stay at a safe distance, and drop gifts like coconuts and pots into the water. Often, Sentinelese warriors would appear on the beach firing arrows to warn them off. A film director with a 1974 expedition found this out the hard way when he was shot in the thigh with an arrow. But Pandit and his team were incredibly patient. They never fought back. They just left their gifts and retreated, returning again and again for 2 decades. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to shift. The warriors would still show up armed, but a cautious curiosity seemed to be replacing their fear. Then, on January 4, 1991, a breakthrough. Pandit's team, which for the first time included a female anthropologist, Dr. Madhumala Chattopadhyay, approached the island. This time, the Sentinelese on the beach were unarmed. As the team dropped coconuts into the water, several men waded in to collect them. Emboldened, the team moved the boat closer. In a historic first, the Sentinelese didn't just take the gifts from the water, they came right up to the boat to take them from the outsiders' hands. It was a stunning moment. The wall of fear, built over a century of trauma, had been briefly broken by a simple offering of coconuts. The team even heard them shouting what they interpreted as Nariyali Jabba Jabba, or more coconuts. These friendly visits continued for a few years, but in the mid to late 1990s, the Indian government made the wise decision to stop them. Officials realized the enormous risk. Sustained contact had decimated the populations of neighboring tribes like the Onge, who were wiped out by disease. The Sentinelese were healthy and self-sufficient. What right did anyone have to interfere, no matter how good the intentions? The brief window of contact was closed, this time out of respect. The modern era. Isolation, tsunami, and trespassing. With the dawn of the 21st century, the world was supposed to look but not touch, and the world was definitely looking, especially after one of the worst natural disasters in memory. On December 26, 2004, a massive earthquake triggered a tsunami across the Indian Ocean. The Andaman Islands were hit hard, and many feared the Sentinelese had been wiped out. 3 days later, an Indian Coast Guard helicopter flew over the island to check for survivors. As it hovered, a lone warrior emerged from the jungle, drew his bow, and fired an arrow at the machine. That photo, of one man defying a helicopter, became an icon of the tribe's fierce, unbreakable spirit. Miraculously, they had survived. It's believed they read the warning signs in the receding ocean, a piece of ancient knowledge that likely saved them, and moved to higher ground before the waves hit. Their resilience was incredible, but their hostility to intruders remained absolute. In 2006, 2 fishermen, Sundar Raj and Pandit Tiwari, were illegally poaching crabs near the island. They dropped anchor to sleep, but it failed, and their boat drifted ashore. The Sentinelese discovered them and killed them. When the Coast Guard tried to retrieve the bodies, their helicopter was driven back by a volley of arrows. The bodies were never recovered. The message couldn't have been clearer: stay away. Despite the warnings and the laws, the island's mystery proved an irresistible temptation for one more outsider, one who believed he was on a mission from God. The story comes full circle. John Allen Chau. John Allen Chau was a 26-year-old American with a passion for adventure and a deep Christian faith. For years, he had a single, all-consuming goal: to reach the people of North Sentinel Island and convert them. He called the island Satan's last stronghold in his journal. This wasn't a spontaneous trip. It was a meticulously planned, illegal mission. In November 2018, Chau paid 2 fishermen about $350 to ferry him to the island under the cover of darkness, dodging naval patrols. His diary, which he left with the fishermen, tells the story of his final days. On November 15th, he paddled his kayak toward the shore with gifts. He saw armed Sentinelese men shouting at him. He yelled back, "My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you." He tried singing worship songs. In response, a young boy fired an arrow which hit the waterproof Bible Chau was holding. He retreated, but he wasn't deterred. His journal shows a man wrestling with fear, but convinced he was doing God's work. "God, I don't want to die," he wrote, "but also ask God to forgive any of the people on this island who try to kill me." On November 16th, he wrote a final letter to his family. "You guys might think I'm crazy in all this, but I think it's worthwhile to declare Jesus to these people," it read. "Please do not be angry at them or at God if I get killed." The next morning, he paddled his kayak to the shore one last time. The fishermen watching from a distance saw the warriors emerge. They saw Chau fall in a volley of arrows. They saw his body being dragged across the beach. To John Chau, his mission was an act of love. But to the Sentinelese, he was just the latest in a long line of uninvited intruders from a world that had only ever brought them pain. His arrival wasn't a divine calling. It was a trespass. His death wasn't martyrdom. It was the tragic and predictable echo of history, playing out once more on the island's shores. So we come back to that question. Why? Why are the Sentinelese so violent? The easy answer, the one that makes for a catchy headline, is that they are savages. But the truth is far more tragic. Their hostility isn't some primitive trait. It's a learned defense. It's a wall they've built over 150 years, with each brick made of trauma. It started with Portman's kidnappings. It was reinforced by shipwrecked sailors who appeared as invaders. It was solidified by every poacher and trespasser who ignored their sovereignty. The Sentinelese aren't hostile because they are ignorant. They are hostile because they know just enough about us. Their brief, violent encounters have taught them one lesson. The world beyond their reef is a threat. Outsiders bring disease, abduction, and death. Their aggression is not an attack. It is a defense, the desperate act of a people fighting to preserve their culture, their health, and their right to exist. This is why India's policy of non-interference is so vital. That 5 nautical-mile buffer is not a cage, it's a shield. It recognizes their right to say no. The desire to contact, study, or save them, no matter how well-intentioned, is just a modern version of the same arrogance that led Portman to their shores in 1880. It puts the curiosity of the outside world above the survival of the tribe itself. The story of North Sentinel Island holds up a dark mirror to our world. The dark secrets of this island aren't hidden in the jungle with the Sentinelese. They are written in our own history books. The Sentinelese are one of the last truly sovereign peoples on Earth, a living connection to a past we've all but forgotten. Their survival is a miracle, and it depends entirely on our ability to learn from the past and finally just leave them alone. The story of the Sentinelese is a powerful reminder that respecting indigenous rights is not a thing of the past. It is more important than ever. If you found this deep dive into the untold history of North Sentinel Island enlightening, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps us continue to tell these important, often overlooked stories. And be sure to click the notification